Hey guys, I'm in Auto Pro Beats, and today I want to talk about a piece of gear that's been in the studio for a couple of years now. I'm talking about the TEGELER Audio Manufaktur Konnektor. I want to discuss the pros, the cons, how I use it, why I use it, what is it, do you need one? First things first, a full disclaimer, I'm not a technical mixing engineer. I don't get mixed into numbers and technical specs and things like that. What is the connector? The connector is an analog matrix that you can control digitally with a plugin. Basically, you connect all the gear that you have to the connector, and then you can use any piece of gear in any order you want, controlling that chain with a plugin. How do you connect your gear to the connector? For that, you have to understand the signal flow. When it comes to analog processing, you need converters. The signal goes like this. The signal comes out of your DAW, Studio One, Pro Tools, through the DA. That's the digital to analog converter. It goes out from there, it goes into any piece of hardware you want to use, and then it goes back into your DAW via an analog to digital converter. That's the flow. On the back of the connector, you have DB25 connections. From there, you can go XLR, TRS on the other end to connect your pieces of gear. Once you have all the gear connected, then you need to go from your DA, the digital to analog converter, into the connector's input. After that, from the output of the connector, you go back into the AD. And now the connector acts like a bridge, sending that audio signal from the DA through your gear in the desired order. It's that simple. That's the signal flow. DA, connector, connector links all the gear together, out of the connector, back into the AD. Now let's move into the PC because I really want to showcase the power of the connector. Once you have all the pieces of hardware connected to the connector, then you can use the plugin to insert analog gear into the signal chain. Inside Studio One, the process is quite simple. I'm using the Pipeline XT plugin. I have the DA. This is the DA. As you can see, it goes out from MADI, that's the Burl 16 converter, and it goes back into AD+, AAS connected to the RME interface. And just like that, now we have the signal flow, DA, connector, AD, back into the PC. I have a mastering session in Studio One, a cool track that sounds like this. If I open up the Pipeline plugin, you can see that audio is sent from Pipeline to the analog chain and is coming back. Now all we have to do is to insert pieces of gear in this chain. For example, let's say that I want to add the compressor to the chain. I can just drag and drop it into an empty slot. Now I have the compressor engaged on that slot. Let's say I want to add the massive passive. Let's say I want to add another EQ, the music EQ. And now I have all this beautiful gear as a mastering chain. The cool thing about the connector is that you can bypass the gear, so you can have the gear further away from your sweet spot. You can even solo any piece of gear that you have in the chain, which is a cool thing if you wanna audition what a piece of gear is doing. For example, in this chain, I wanna hear just the compressor. Messo il piatto dove sono le mutande. Questo slalom è gigante, non lo regge neanche Atlante. Fuori giorno c'è la luce che mi guida nel quadrante. Non faccio tanta più fatica, perché soffro come quando ero in lockdown che mi mancava la tua fica. Ogni attimo finito nel mio cosmo si dilata. Sento il battito che accelera di un cuore a pugni.
pugnalate, ho la testa che mi esplode di
I can audition that specific piece of gear.
domande. Dove ho cazzo messo il piatto, dove sono le mutande? Questo slalom è gigante.
Powerful stuff. Another amazing thing why the connector is so versatile and why it changed the way I work is that you can change the order of your analog pieces of gear. For example, let's say that I want the compressor last in this chain.
Gigante, non lo regge neanche Atlante, fuori giorno c'è la luce.
Drag and drop, now the compressor is after the massive passive, after the music cue. Let's say I want the music cue first in the chain.
Non faccio tanta più fatica, perché soffro come quando ero in lockdown che mi mancava la...
I have full control over the order of the chain, and this is really powerful because it allows you to listen to the chain in different version of it. You can have compression first, EQ first. Another powerful feature is the mid-side matrix. You can convert your audio signal into mid-side and you can use any piece of gear that you have in mid-side. You can do that with these two little modules. For example, let's say that I want the music cue to be in mid-side. Everything that's in between the two modules now is mid-side. And I can do things like adding more top end to the sides.
Più fatica, perché soffro come quando ero in lockdown che mi mancava la tua fica. Ogni attimo finito nel mio cosmo si dilata, sento il battito che accelera di un cuore appugnalato. Ho la testa che mi esplode di domande. Dove ho cazzo messo il piatto, dove sono le mutande? Questo slalom è gigante, non lo regge neanche Atlante, fuori giorno c'è la luce.
Corrective EQ on the sides. Add bass just on the center.
Se non faccio tanta più fatica, perché soffro come quando ero in lockdown che mi mancava la tua fica. Ogni attimo finito nel mio cosmo si dilata, sento...
This allows me to process differently the sides from the center. This is available in plugins, but it's not available that often when it comes to hardware. The same workflow applies here. I can move the compressor now and have that in mid-side.
Che accelera di un cuore appugnalato, ho la testa che mi esplode di domande. Dove ho cazzo messo il piatto, dove sono le mutande? Questo slalom è gigante, non lo regge neanche Atlante, fuori giorno c'è la...
And I can manipulate the entire stereo width with different processing, saturation, EQs, compression. Really powerful stuff. The great thing is that when you're done, I don't know, processing your masters, your stems, anything you want to do with it, you just save the project, and when you go back, you have the exact chain, the exact order. You don't have the settings on the hardware, but that's a different story. This is how I use the connector, and this is why I have it in the studio. Now, for the sad part, or the cons. I will be replacing the connector pretty soon with a different patch bay that has digital control, not because the connector sounds bad or it sucks. It's just because the functionality of it is aimed more towards mastering. And let me explain that. You cannot use mono pieces of gear with the connector. Let me rephrase that. You can use mono pieces of gear, but not the way I want. For example, when mixing, my workflow is pretty simple. I like processing the vocals in the analog domain. I like using analog compression. I like using EQs. Most of EQs compression aimed at vocal processing are mono. When you connect a mono piece of gear to the connector, you have to connect it either on the left side, either on the right side. So you lose an entire slot for one piece of gear. That sucks, and that's not flexible enough for mixing mono sources. But like I've said, the connector is aimed more towards mastering, two-bus processing, stem processing, and that's why I will change it. I want to be able to cascade channels. For example, I want to be able to send audio from the left channel of the music cue into the right channel. That's not possible with the connector. Again, I want to be able to send the right channel of the music cue into the left channel on the massive passive. The left channel on the connector stays there. you cannot route that into the right channel. Same goes with the right channel, it's not that flexible for mixing. As far as the sound goes, I cannot hear a degradation of it when using the connector. The alternative to the connector is to hardwire all the pieces of gear. So I have the Elysia Music Q going into the Massive Passive with physical wires, or to use a patch bay, or to use something that I will showcase in a future video. But that's the connector. I've been using it with great success for the last 2 years or even more, I think. It's an amazing piece of gear that really changed the way I look at analog processing. Being able to have all the gear and change the order of it on a single DA to AD channel was pretty huge. That's the other thing why I love the connector. You don't need to have a multi-channel converter setup. You just need one single channel of conversion, and that's exactly what I have with the P16 and the AD Plus from Dangerous. A single channel. I'm going out of the Burl, going back into the Dangerous. In between I have the connector with all the gears. It's not that versatile if you want to use pieces of gear simultaneously. For example, you want to process the drums and you want to process the tubas also. Then you need multiple converters and multiple connectors, unfortunately. For something that's aimed at mastering, aimed at tubas processing, I believe this is incredible. From what I saw, you cannot get the connector anymore. It's discontinued, but I hope that they will bring something better than it based on this. I forgot to mention that the connector is connected to the PC and talking to the plugin via one single Ethernet cable that's connected to the router. I had a couple of small hiccups, but nothing too crazy when it comes to setting it up. It works just fine. I highly recommend looking into the connector or similar products if you wanna do analog processing. It changed a lot of things for me, and I believe it's worth investing in a piece of gear like this. Even though it's not flashy, it's the hub for your analog gear. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. Thanks for the support and see you guys really soon. Cheers.